What happens when you take your very last breath? Does everything just vanish? Or do you step through a doorway into something you can't even begin to imagine? Welcome, seeker, to the ultimate mystery. Today we are plunging into one of the most profound and frankly mind-bending texts ever written, the Bardo Thödol, better known in the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Now forget everything you think you know about a simple guide to the afterlife. This isn't just some dusty old manual for what happens when you kick the bucket. Oh no. This is a spiritual roadmap, a detailed, sometimes terrifying guide for the journey that begins the instant you die. Get ready, because we're about to cross that threshold together. We'll decode its secrets and maybe, just maybe, start to grasp what it truly means to be. The Bardo Thödol was the creation of Padmasambhava, a figure so legendary, he's practically a myth. Born in India, he's the one credited with bringing Buddhism to Tibet back in the 8th century. In Tibetan tradition, they call him Guru Rinpoche, the precious master. But Padmasambhava wasn't just some average monk. He was a deeply profound spiritual master, a yogi who had mastered mystical techniques and esoteric teachings. The Bardo Thödol sprang from his intense desire to guide not just the living, but the dead, offering them a path to liberation even after that final exhale. From a young age, Padmasambhava showed these incredible mystical abilities, recognized as a Mahasiddha, someone who's reached an extreme level of spiritual realization, developing spiritual powers or siddhis that were considered nothing short of miraculous. He was invited to Tibet by King Trisong Detsen, who wanted to spread Buddhism and spiritually strengthen the country, hoping to unite everyone under one belief system. Now, at that time, Tibet was a hotbed of intense shamanic practices and animist beliefs, deeply rooted in the Bon religion, the indigenous Tibetan spiritual practice. This wild, even chaotic, spiritual landscape made it tough for Buddhism to take root. When Padmasambhava arrived, he faced serious resistance from various cultural and spiritual forces. The local deities and spirits from the Bon traditions pushed back against Buddhism. So, Padmasambhava used his knowledge of magic and tantric ritualism to, shall we say, tame these spirits. This integration of Bon deities and practices into Tibetan Buddhism was absolutely crucial for creating a lasting spiritual foundation. And so, Padmasambhava founded Tibet's very first Buddhist monastery, the Samye Monastery, and began sharing profound teachings about the mind, reality, and the cycle of existence known as samsara. In Tibetan Buddhism, there's this understanding that death isn't the end, but a transition, a moment where liberation is possible. Padmasambhava understood that at the moment of death, the mind enters a unique state where, finally free from the physical body's distractions, it becomes incredibly receptive to ultimate truth. He saw this as a golden, unique opportunity for liberation. But he also knew that most people, when they die, get completely lost in illusions and fears that slam the door shut on this possibility. His mission was to create a guide that could be read aloud by those with the dying or even studied during life, so the mind would be prepared for the bardos, the transitional states after death. Essentially, he wanted to ease suffering and throw open the doors to enlightenment, even when everything felt uncertain and was dissolving. This deep compassion is the bedrock of the Bardo Thödol. He knew many wouldn't achieve enlightenment in life, but he saw death as a final chance. And so, he offered instructions for practitioners and disciples to recognize the clear light, the pure manifestation of the mind, at the very moment of their passing. The Bardo Thödol guides us through three main states, or bardos, that every soul traverses. First, the Chikhai Bardo, the moment of death. In the Chikhai Bardo, the soul experiences the moment of death itself, that point of transition where the physical body dissolves and consciousness is finally freed from its material limitations. Once that dissolution is complete, the soul finds itself face to face with the primordial clear light, described in the Bardo Thödol as a dazzling, pure, immense light. This clear light is the manifestation of the absolute nature of the mind, a state of pure, unconditional consciousness where there is no duality, no fear, no attachment. Some call it the higher self, others the solar mind. There are countless names for this state of totality and infinite peace. For the spiritual practitioner, the Chikhai Bardo offers the possibility of final liberation. If the soul can recognize the clear light as part of its own essence, it achieves instant liberation, nirvana, and there's no need to pass through the other stages of the bardos. This recognition doesn't rely on rituals or doctrines. It's a direct, complete experience of truth where the mind sees itself without any filters or distortions. In this moment, all conditioning, all karma, all identities simply dissolve. On the other hand, for those who are unprepared, the sheer intensity of the clear light can be absolutely terrifying. The mind, instead of recognizing the light as its true nature, might interpret it as a threat due to fear or attachment to what is familiar. In this case, the soul retreats, losing the chance for liberation, and enters the next stages of the bardos, where it faces increasingly distorted and limiting visions based on its karmic tendencies. Second, the Chönyid Bardo, the Bardo of visions. As Carl Gustav Jung famously said, gods and demons are projections of the unconscious, powerful, and inescapable until understood as parts of ourselves. In the Chönyid Bardo, the soul finds itself in a state of consciousness stripped of its physical body, within a dimension where tangible boundaries no longer exist. Here, the soul experiences projections of its own mind, projections that can appear as both angelic forms and deeply disturbing, frightening visions. This bardo reveals the very essence of the mind, where everything that has been repressed, desired, or feared surges forth in an intensified form. The visions in the Chönyid Bardo directly reflect the emotional and karmic states the soul has accumulated over lifetimes. They manifest in two distinct forms, peaceful visions and wrathful visions. In the peaceful vision stage, the soul is initially greeted by visions of peaceful deities, which represent enlightened and benevolent aspects of consciousness. These figures might appear as Buddhas, bodhisattvas, or deities of light, radiating the positive qualities the soul has cultivated. The peaceful visions have a serene presence and offer a sense of peace. However, for the unprepared mind, these visions can be overwhelming or simply incomprehensible, causing the soul to retreat and doubt the reality of this experience. In the wrathful vision stage, if the soul doesn't recognize the peaceful, essential nature of the initial visions, it's gradually confronted by more intense visions known as the wrathful deities. These figures are manifestations of anger, fear, and repressed desires, taking on monstrous and unsettling forms. Crucially, these wrathful deities are not external, malevolent entities, but expressions of the mind itself, reflecting the passions and attachments that still bind the soul to the cycle of suffering. The Chönyid Bardo is described as a state where the mind is completely free from physical limitations. It's a pure state of psychic manifestation where everything is amplified. The visions that arise resemble dreams, but unlike ordinary dreams, they possess a striking clarity and vividness. This happens because the mind, now free from the body, experiences its internal energies in an unfiltered way. Everything that was repressed and accumulated emerges with an almost tangible intensity. These visions are considered opportunities for learning and enlightenment, as each one represents an aspect of the self that needs integration or transcendence. Those who maintain full awareness during this bardo can perceive that all these visions, good and bad, peaceful and wrathful, are merely creations of the mind. Recognizing this truth allows the soul to dissolve fear and attain liberation. At this stage, the Bardo Thödol advises the soul to focus on the clear light, the primordial essence of the mind, described as a vast and pure radiance. Recognizing the clear light is the key to total liberation, as it represents the innate nature of all beings. It's the sun amidst the clouds of visions, the light that remains unchanged despite all mental projections. If the soul manages to see through the visions, it can achieve enlightenment and thus transcend the cycle of rebirth. However, recognizing the clear light is incredibly difficult for the ordinary mind. For most beings, the visions are so real and filled with personal meaning that that it becomes a monumental challenge to see beyond them. For this reason, the Bardo Thödol suggests that spiritual practitioners train during life to detach from illusions and contemplate the nature of the mind. With such practice, even when faced with the intense visions of the Chönyid Bardo, they will be able to maintain their focus on the clear light and find peace. Fear and attachment are the greatest barriers to liberation. The visions, in their intensity, can provoke deep fear, especially the wrathful deities, which represent untamed aspects of the psyche. This fear creates a sense of separation, preventing the soul from recognizing the visions as parts of itself. The soul might desperately want to flee from these visions, or out of attachment, fixate on some of them, particularly the peaceful visions, which keeps it bound to the cycle of samsara. To overcome this cycle, the soul must recognize the visions as empty of their own inherent reality. In Tibetan Buddhism, this concept is known as shunyata, or emptiness. The mind that remembers emptiness during the Chönyid Bardo can observe all visions, but remains completely unattached, understanding them as mere temporary expressions of its own nature. The experience of the Chönyid Bardo, therefore, is not a punishment or some pointless suffering, but a phase of profound revelation where the soul confronts the mirror of its own mind. It's a test that distinguishes those ready for liberation from those who still need rebirth to deepen their learning. Third, the Sidpa Bardo rebirth. In the Sidpa Bardo, the final stage, the soul faces a crucial moment. The choice of its next body, determined by the accumulated energy of all its actions, thoughts, and intentions, what we call karma. It's as if the entire previous journey has led to this point, where what we carry within dictates our next destination. Entering this bardo, the soul has already experienced dissolution in the Chikhai Bardo and faced its own projections and illusions in the Chönyid Bardo. Now it finds itself in a state of greater psychic density where the desire for rebirth intensifies, driven by fears and attachments that haven't yet been overcome. This desire, as Tibetan Buddhism teaches, is what compels the soul to seek a new body, a new form of existence. In the Sidpa Bardo, consciousness is heavily influenced by karmic inclinations, which act like subtle marks left by actions from past lives. These marks function as magnetic forces, drawing the soul towards circumstances and experiences that perfectly mirror its inner state. If, for example, the soul carries a great deal of fear, that fear might guide it toward a rebirth where it will face those very same emotions. Similarly, intense desires and uncontrolled emotions create a vortex of energy that shapes the kind of life the soul will encounter in the next cycle. During the Sidpa Bardo, the soul experiences a series of visions associated with the rebirth process. These visions often include images of couples in union, a metaphor for the creation of new life. Here, the soul is called to choose a new body, unconsciously guided by emotional tendencies and karmic impulses. In many descriptions, the Bardo Thödol suggests that upon seeing these images, the soul should maintain a state of detachment and lucidity. Only then can it avoid being blindly driven into an undesirable rebirth. For those who can sustain calm and detachment, the Sidpa Bardo offers one final, incredible chance for transcendence. There remains the possibility of not being reborn, of choosing the path of liberation. This is the ultimate goal of the spiritual practitioner. Rather than being reborn under the sway of illusions and attachments, they must recognize these visions as manifestations of their own mind, ephemeral and empty in nature. Throughout the experiences of the Sidpa Bardo, consciousness feels a powerful attraction to a new body, a process that, according to the Bardo Thödol, can be compared to a psychic storm. It's as if the urge to continue existing, to be once again, becomes absolutely irresistible. The choice of a new body isn't a conscious one. It happens through a deep, instinctive call, where the characteristics of the new rebirth are shaped by the mind's state. It's as if the next body is a mirror of what the soul's mind needs to experience or resolve. This process of choice also reflects the Buddhist belief that each rebirth is an opportunity for spiritual growth. The body the soul chooses aligns most closely with its karmic and spiritual development. However, many don't grasp this opportunity and end up being reborn in adverse conditions, where suffering simply perpetuates itself. Those who can see beyond this illusion, however, may reach a state where, instead of rebirth, they can merge into the clear light, the ultimate essence of the mind. According to the Bardo Thödol, preparation for this final stage begins in life. By contemplating the nature of our desires and fears while we're still alive, we become more aware of the impulses that shape our destiny. Spiritual practices, like meditation and reflecting on death, strengthen the capacity for detachment, helping the mind to remain unbound by the dramas that arise in the Sidpa Bardo. Thus, the Sidpa Bardo reveals a simple, yet profound truth, that life and death are interconnected, and that the cycle of rebirth is nothing more than a continuous expression of our own choices and perceptions. By freeing ourselves from attachments, we free ourselves from the cycle of rebirth and reach enlightenment, the state where there is no more rebirth, because there is no longer the illusion of a fixed identity. The Bardo Thödol isn't just some religious text or a collection of esoteric beliefs. It's a tool for self-knowledge, a mirror for our mind, and a map for our destiny. It teaches us that death is the great full stop of the human story, but it's also the portal to new beginnings. As Ram Dass once said, "When you die, there is only one question that matters: how much did you love?" In this sense, the Tibetan Book of the Dead challenges us to look at our own lives. Are we ready for the final journey? Are we prepared to let go of everything we believe we are? Perhaps by truly contemplating these teachings, we can not only prepare for death, but also finally learn to truly live. If this deep dive into the unknown resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Let us know in the comments what fascinates you most about life after death, because the path of self-knowledge is long, and together we can explore the greatest mysteries of existence.